Welcome to Handmade Happenings. I'm Marissa and this is part 2 of my summer project, which is a Disney Descendants and Tangled inspired look. I shared the inspiration for this outfit and made the dress in last week's video, which I will link in the description. This week I am making a petticoat to go under. I decided to do a petticoat for a couple of reasons. First, it's going to add even more fullness to the skirt and hopefully also make it look just a little shorter than it currently is. My other inspiration is the petticoat from the live action Cinderella dress, which has flounces at the hem in different colors that appear whenever she turns and the hem of the dress moves. So I want to mimic that idea a little bit. Not that I'll be dancing in the dress, however, it is meant to fit in with a dance scene, so it does seem appropriate. My basic plan is to have 3 layers. Each will be a different color. I chose pink, blue, and purple, and will be made up of a circle skirt with flounces added at the hem. I did a lot of math to prepare for this project just to make sure that I knew how much material I needed to buy. But before I started constructing it, I figured I'd better run all of those numbers again just to make sure that I was reading my notes correctly and interpreting them properly. And this is where I quickly ran into a problem. Somehow, when I was calculating it originally, I made the skirt base part way too short. I don't know how this happened or why, but when I corrected that, I discovered that I probably was not going to have enough fabric. At least not for my original plan, which was to make the waistband of the petticoat elastic. And what that was going to mean if I did an elastic waistband would have been that the skirt opening would have needed to be bigger because it needs to be able to slip on. And if the waist opening or circumference is bigger, that makes the circumference at the hem bigger, which means that I need more flounces in order to go around it all, which means that I need more fabric. However, if I use a fabric waistband with a hook and eye, then that opening can be a lot smaller because it really only needs to be the size of my waist. And at that point, it of course makes everything else smaller too, all of those circumferences, meaning that I need less fabric. And when I ran those numbers, I felt that I had enough to be comfortable just moving forward with that instead. So to get started, I measured the length of the skirt of my dress from the waist to the hem of the lining, and then subtracted 6 inches for the ruffle. This gives me the length of the base of each layer. Then I got my tool and I cut the waist part out using my already drafted ungathered circle skirt. This was the nice thing about changing my plans, is that I already had the pattern drafted out as opposed to having to draft a new one, which is what I would have had to do with the other plan. Then I measured from the cut edge down to the length that I had already determined for my base layers and used that to cut out the hem. And I have a whole video on drafting circle skirts where I give way better details than what I just gave here, which is just an overview. Next, I cut 6-inch flounces from the remainder of the tool. And these are specifically flounces because they're cut on curves and not ruffles, which are cut straight. To do this, I just folded my tool similar to how I would for cutting out a circle skirt, which is to fold it in half vertically and then again horizontally. Then placed a ruler in the folded corner, measured 6 inches down, and then cut a circle. Then from there I cut along that curve, again measuring 6 inches down, and kept repeating until I ran out of fabric. And then I seamed all of those pieces together. So with all of the flounce pieces sewn together, I needed to gather them. Earlier this year, I invested in a gathering foot, and one feature of it is that you're supposed to be able to gather one layer while sewing it to another. I tried this, but I just couldn't get it to work. It kept slipping off the edge of the fabric with the needle, so I just switched to gathering it, and I still kind of had trouble. I don't know what I was doing exactly that caused this, but the top thread would just break every once in a while, usually right when I got going faster. I also found it really hard to see the edge of the tool, so I may have just been getting way too close to that edge and going off of it a lot. But I did eventually manage to get all 3 flounces gathered. Then I lined up the raw edges of the flounce with the hem of my base and sewed them together. And when the edges of the flounce met, I decided that there wasn't that much left and just went ahead and overlapped the excess over the flounces that I had already attached. And I did that with all 3 layers. They each had varying amounts of excess, but never enough to go all the way around a second time. I stacked the layers, making sure to place them so that the areas with overlapped flounce aren't on top of each other to keep them from building up and ending up with a lopsided hem. Then I pinned the layers together at the waist, trying to line up the raw edges. It's still really hard to see, so I don't know how well I actually did on that. In addition to not liking working with tulle, I don't really want it against my skin either, so I'm going to add a lining under it. I measure the tulle from the waist to the ruffle edge to get my length. As for the fabric, I recycled it from an old dress that didn't fit right. It conveniently already has a circle skirt, so I just had to cut it off and cut it down to size. I'd actually used the zipper from this dress for the dress for this project. I removed the pocket on the open side of the skirt and then sewed the pocket on the other side closed and cut off the excess. I'm putting horsehair braid in the hem to add some more body, which means I need a facing. For that, I used the piece of the hem that I cut off, sewed the inner edge, and attached it to the lining with the right sides together. I then flipped the facing to the wrong side of the lining and sandwiched the horsehair in between the layers and sewed it in place. Now I hemmed the side opening where the zipper used to be and added it to the bottom of all those tulle layers. Then I basted it together at the waist and cut a slit in the tulle layers at the same place as the one in the lining. I cut the waistband from the bodice of the same dress that I took the lining from. I fold over each short edge and then attach one of the long edges to the waist. I had to pause here to take a picture of how crazy this looked. Now I fold the waistband over twice and sew it down. Then I used a large hook and eye as a fastener. My placing was a little off, making the waist a bit too big, but I'll probably only wear it a couple of times before resizing it for my niece, so I'm not worried about it, and I'll just use a safety pin to make it fit. Thank you for watching, and I hope you will join me next week for part 3 where I make the accessories.